Lord, we do come together with you around your the table that you have set up for us. And as we commune, as we chat, as we consider things, Spirit of God, we ask that you would even speak to us and through us. We ask, Lord God, that this podcast would be peppered with insights for your children, that even if we don't clearly articulate things, that there will be something, Holy Spirit, that you do. May you realize your full intention for this next 45 minutes to an hour and a half. In Jesus' name.
Let us go.
I love that.
I think we're ready to go.
Awesome. Let's go.
Good people, welcome to it. We're back with things we didn't say on Sunday. Thinking through our Thriving in Babylon series, what it looks like to work in our proverbial Babylon, which is Johannesburg. And today we're going to be talking about mental health. I have some special guests today, and I am going to ask them to introduce themselves just to give some context to who they are, and then we're going to hit it. Maybe let me start this side.
Yeah, thanks, Marsha. So my name is Brendan Belsham. I'm a psychiatrist and more specifically a child psychiatrist. So I see children. I work in my own private practice. I have been so for the last 20 to 25 years. Experienced a few episodes of burnout along the way. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Fabulous. I said yay because we'll get to hear some personal stories, not because I'm celebrating your burnout. Yeah. There we go. Thanks, Doc. Is this your first time on a podcast with us?
It is, yes.
Please insert applause. Yeah. And then we have a veteran with us, Candice. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Marsh. So I'm Candice Lambert, a neuroscience counselor in private practice. What I mean by that is I studied neuroscience coaching, and I'm also a registered counsellor in private practice, and I'm also a sensory integration and processing specialist. So I see kids from about the age of 11 up. And at the moment, I'm kind of focused on young entrepreneurs around their mental health, burnout prevention, imposter syndrome, financial trauma. So yes, so very exciting things.
Awesome. This is going to be good.
It's good. Siviwe, I'm a psychologist, but trying my level best to not be any more than that. But hey, jokes aside, I'm so excited for this episode. When we thought of this series, one of the things we were hoping is for this moment, because of so many people in every nation, Bryanston, who facing challenges in the workplace that feel like their Gethsemane moment, and to have people who are navigating faith, but also the professional aspect of helping people navigate frames of thinking and processing their emotions and being able to engage the world in a better way. I think it's going to be super helpful. So whoever's watching, I suggest that you lean in. And also, I'm here for my marriage. So I'm getting ready to ask you a whole bunch of questions to make sure my marriage stays intact. Babe, how you doing?
If you behave, everything will be fine.
Yes.
I am well. Funny enough, between the two of us, we have a good couple of decades of ministry under our belt. And from pastoring, we really have experienced people coming through with a lot of difficulties where they are finding that they are experiencing a tension between their faith and their mental health. They are struggling to integrate what would be strategies for mental health, and even, let's call them, strategies for faith, and have those integrate and lived out in their workplace. So I want to begin with that question. Is there a tension between faith and mental health? Candice?
Yes, definitely. So oftentimes we'll want to do things out of the faith in us, the faith behavior in us. And so we want to show up, well, we want to show up perfect, but we don't talk about the undercurrent or the challenges or the process it took to actually get there. And And so sometimes we have an over-identification with our job, with our financial health, and we kind of tend to neglect just us being present for God.
Yeah.
Just for us to show up from a perspective of grace and of trusting Him instead of the over-identification with money and work.
Yeah. So I'm hearing you say that the tension does exist, and maybe let me press in on the question, should there be a tension between those two? And where there is a tension, how do we integrate those two, or should we even integrate the two? Dr. Balsh?
Well, I see mental health as so intrinsic to spiritual health. I mean, I see the two so intertwined that I think it can be very difficult to think of them separately.
Yeah.
But, to follow on from Candace's point, if God has called me to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a whatever, then I've got to show up as the best I can possibly be. I've got to be competent. I can't fall apart. I can't take time off work, otherwise I'm somehow falling short of that calling that,
very good.
That's the narrative that I think many of us carry. And I think we don't give ourselves permission to not be okay from time to time. And I do think that's a problem. And it probably comes back to the point of over-identification with whatever field. We are first and foremost children of God.
Yes.
And that should come way above certainly our careers. I probably haven't even answered your question, but it just made me think about, I find it hard to disentangle mental health from spiritual health. But I think sometimes we mistake what we do as somehow linked to, as somehow reflective of our faith, when actually it is just what we do. Even faith-related activity, going to church, showing up at home cell, those are doing things and don't necessarily come to the core of that table that was spoken of on Sunday, of that intimacy with God, which is the sort of fulcrum of really our relationship with the Lord. Activity stripped away.
Absolutely. If you haven't listened to this past Sunday's sermon, please do yourself a favor and listen to it. Joel gave a brilliant word on prayer and work. And where he brought us to was moving through the asking and the seeking to the knocking, and finally the door being opened that we may fellowship with God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit at a table, which, like Dr. Balsham was saying, is the fulcrum of what it means to have a vibrant spiritual life.
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked the question as a starter, because I do think it's unhelpful to our generation to think of mental health as a modern thing.
Yeah.
It's ancient.
Absolutely.
Amen.
It's super ancient.
Yeah.
It's Genesis 3 ancient. It's Genesis 1 ancient. And there's stories I have in my mind that today I'm going to kind of keep bringing up, because there are pictures of this exact conversation when someone like Elijah, who's in the height of all things called success, height of all things active,
all things calling,
activity, calling, you almost think that success is a powerful barrier for protecting internal health. And he has one moment of threat and his whole world crumbles.
Yep.
The New Testament speaks about this guy that, listen, this guy, it almost had to remind everyone that he was human. That's how close he was to God and effective he was in ministry.
Yeah.
And he was crumbled by a threat. He hides, and God himself has to get him out of there. And I think when I think of that example and the power of disappointment,
Yep.
and the power of fear, and anxiety. I go, the more we make anxiety and mental health to be a modern thing, we strip people from the beautiful examples of history that are present, not just in the Bible, but in ancient texts of how people navigated through life. In other words, you are not alone.
Yeah.
You are not the
precedent.
first.
Yeah.
And you won't be the last. But what you're feeling is seen. It's valuable. It's there, but it's not outside the scope of all things history and all things God and all things community.
Yeah.
And I think why that's also important is it broadens the idea of mental health in its proper, truest sense away from just modern neuroscientific jargon. You know, we have new diagnoses every few years. We invent new diagnoses.
A new DSM
You know, every time you
criteria.
go to a conference, there's another diagnosis. So then, now there's something called pathological demand avoidance, which all of our children apparently have, which when I first started training wasn't even a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just an example. But I think to your point, Siv, I think we constrict ourselves if we just think about mental health as a modern construct. Of course, it's not.
Yeah.
And it opens it up to different avenues of healing as well that are not just the modern trend of what one is supposed to do, whether that's in terms of medication or even therapeutic techniques.
Yeah.
So I have a confession.
I love that you volunteered it. Go.
So I don't like the word mental health.
Yeah, interesting.
I just,
Say more.
no. I don't know about you, Dr. Belsham, but I feel like when we say mental health, we're like sitting on this rock, kumbaya, and everything is just amazing. But no one really talks about or thinks about the process it took for you to get there. Do you understand? But deep truth.
You mean if you're mentally healthy?
Yes, if you're mentally healthy, to get to the kumbaya
I see.
moment. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, that's why when sometimes I just cringe. I don't know.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because
You can
I suppose in its deepest, truest sense, none of us are mentally healthy. We're all wounded
No,
That's true.
because we're human.
it's really about the process and the outcome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even when Joel was preaching on Sunday, he spoke about the process of prayer instead of the outcome, no matter what the outcome. And even if you don't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But just that word mental health, I almost want to replace it.
With-
So that our previous generation and the generations to come after us will get what we're talking about.
So what would you replace it with?
Trauma-informed care. I don't know. Something more real. I don't actually know, but something more real. Something that actually sits at the bottom of that tank instead of at the top.
But it
just
becomes,
floats.
Look, I kind of agree with you, but I'm not in the same kind of world, I guess. I'm agreeing in the kumbaya kind of expression that leaves out some of the core stuff. But I can imagine it's hard in this world to define anything in matters that seem appropriate to all parties involved.
Right.
Yes.
Which adds to the conversation of mental health that I believe continues to narrow all conversations to what is suitable to all of us versus the robustness of discovering true life, true realities and pain. So for you to say that, you have a whole bunch of history of why you're saying you would call it trauma-informed care, right? But maybe somebody else is like, no, trauma is...
It's too deep.
It's too much. And I'm glad that you bring it up because I think sometimes it is the use of words and the definitions that in and of themselves seem to be spiraling and causing certain issues, for lack of a better word. So I do think it might be helpful to expand why you think that, what you've seen that makes you think that would be a more appropriate definition than just mental health in your opinion.
So for me, it's more about the process, right? And it's that deep stuff we need to work with, Dr. Belsham, just in terms of like, where are we getting? Okay, where are we going? But what's underneath in that river that we can't see, that murky water?
Are you assuming that everyone has been traumatized in one way.
There's elements, there's certain elements, and I think it goes back to like the normal like practitioner focus, which is like your functioning. If your functioning is okay, there's no real reason for you to really meddle with anything. Yeah. But maybe in the context of Babylon, there's a lot of stuff that might come up for us that never really previously came up and doesn't impact on our functioning.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Did you have an example?
No, I was just going to say, for example, financial trauma is something that is coming up a lot for me in Babylon. What was the financial narrative that you had as a child? Mm-hmm. There's some of us that have an obvious financial trauma. Mm-hmm. I have got millions of rands, but I'm still scared of the future.
Oh no! When you said millions of rands, I'm like, that doesn't sound like a trauma.
No, but
I get what you're saying.
Right?
Yes.
I put my last 20 rand, right? That's a trauma right there.
There you go. What was I saying? Yeah. So that's how it came. That's how sometimes it's not about how much money you've got. It's what was the narrative when you were growing up. Right. And that's for me, Babylon it's coming up a lot. And for me, it's not that obvious. And I thought I didn't really have financial trauma. I was fine.
Yeah.
Until Daniel.
So I think we probably need to agree that mental health then exists on a spectrum.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And we're also not talking about bringing people to this utopic arrival. Outside of Jesus, at least with a Christian worldview, we know that in this world there will be suffering, right? In Babylon, there will be suffering. And I think some of our mental health, at least for me, when I consider a faith narrative and a mental health narrative that is maybe let's say outside of faith, I think for us, we need to consider that we do live in a broken world, like you said, Dr. Belsham, right? There's sin around us. There's sin that we commit, and there's sin that's committed against us. And it could be gross sin, it could be, unconscious sin, it could be sin motivations that are alive in us that interact with the things that we do or don't do at work, the things we experience, the things that or the ways that we interpret our work experiences that speaks to our health mentally, spiritually, and as an integrated person. Sure. But I want to double click on why, or maybe double down and get us to think through, why do you think people feel a shame around speaking to their mental health, particularly as it relates to their work?
Their trauma-informed care. They TFC.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
I got you.
But if we can speak to that, like
the psychologist over here.
I know in walking with people and counseling people, they feel like they need to show up in a particular way in their work, that they don't have the luxury to not be whatever it is that their work requires of them. Why is it so difficult for us to perhaps sit and consider that maybe there is some ill health? And when I say ill health, I don't mean that you're not functioning. Yes, but I'm talking about anxiety. I'm talking about depression. I'm talking about burnout. I'm talking about the effects of stress. Like, why are we so slow to open that box and look at it? And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're not slow. Maybe we live in a culture where everyone is racing to say, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm burnt out. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think on a very practical level, and I'm not really familiar with corporate. I've never been in corporate. But I can imagine that for certain employees, there is a fear around that vulnerability because what might it mean for my job?
Absolutely.
I mean, if I'm vying with so-and-so for a promotion and I'm the one who's acknowledged that I'm not sleeping at night or, I've got problems at home or, whatever it might be, maybe I'll be the one who might be shelved.
Yeah.
So I think on a practical level, I think, and then I think it's incumbent on work environments and employers to create a culture where that is okay.
Yeah.
And I think that often means leading by example.
Good.
Where as the boss, if you can say, guys, I'm experiencing a bit of burnout, whatever. I mean, maybe that's not something that many companies would do, but I think there needs to be a shift there.
Yeah.
You need to lead by example.
Very good.
So I think that's one thing. And I think and Candice can come in as well, but I think for many other people in the workplace, acknowledging that vulnerability or that weakness can be the tip of an iceberg, that it's just too scary to open
I like
up,
that.
because if you don't have enough containment around that, whether it's family support, whether it's support within the workplace, whether it's professional support in the form of a therapist, then where do you put that,
take that,
And so it can be easier to just keep the scab on rather than open up to anybody, whether it's at work or at home or with your friends or at your church or your tennis club or wherever it might be.
And you're actually more likely to then say, okay, this faith thing is going to help me spiritually bypass almost having to deal with
just
some of those underlying
which
things.
it won't,
Which it won't,
doesn't do.
right? Yeah. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, look, there was Pew research done in the States. 60% of pastors feel they cannot share with anyone how they really feel.
How about that?
Because it will jeopardize their job.
There you go.
And if I walked through the stats, I'm busy reading a book now by Neil Mackenzie called Don't Blow Your Ministry. And he walks through the phases prior ministers blowing their ministry, whether it be affairs or impropriety in any way. And what tends to happen is they feel some kind of trauma and they can't go to the community they're leading for anything, whilst that community continues to demand of them everything. And they feel the same at home. And so they try to politely isolate while they function.
Yes.
And in that isolation, they find a solution that leads to, I was saying at Freedom Class the other day, I said, all right, so tell me, am I not having an affair because in my career, if I have an affair, I lose my job? If I was not a minister, what's stopping me? What, like at the core of my being, why am I not sleeping with that lady? Is it because I'm going to lose my job, or is it because I am a follower of Jesus, or whatever it is? And I think some of those core realities that can only exist and be experienced within the table of relationship with God and with others sometimes get pushed aside by the demands and the anxiety and the stress and the need to perform. And the moment I let my guard down, I've been hurt too many times, or I have experienced bad feedback too many times for me to, so let me continuously show I'm good. You know what I mean? But also in the same vein for people like you, I've been wanting to ask both of you this question for a while. When the people you meet, how do I phrase this? Do you find that sometimes the people you meet treat you like priests? Because I find sometimes the people I meet treat me like a therapist.
Yes, they do.
How do you navigate that dynamic?
Yeah, just as an aside, before I get into that, a lot of my patients are Jewish and actually think I'm Jewish, and I don't know why, but so every now and again they'll slip up and they'll say, "But Rabbi, what should we do?" Sorry, doctor, Rabbi, doctor. And so I sometimes overtly get called a priest of sorts, but even covertly, you get the sense that you're being looked up to in that way. Which can be a privilege in some senses, but risky in others. And I think for me, one of the ways to navigate that is to be vulnerable and to be authentic. And I find that tricky as a child psychiatrist, having my own children who are not perfect,
Sure.
you know, because they actually think that you should have perfect children. If you're a child psychiatrist, how can you not have perfect children?
Because if you don't have perfect children,
Then what hope
do
is there for the
I
rest of the
have?
world? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's power in authenticity, because then you become relatable.
Yeah.
So, of course, you have to be careful of the confidentiality. You don't want to throw your own kids under the bus.
Yeah.
But if you can, in a respectful way, share your own journey as a parent, and say, you know, I've been there before. You know, I think that becomes really powerful as a healer, as a doctor, as a therapist. And so there's that balance, which I think we all need to try and find.
Yeah.
Any reflections on that, Candice?
Well, I've never been called a rabbi before.
Just wait. There's still time.
It's still time.
It's the
You're young.
hairstyle. It's the hairstyle and the glasses that are here
Cut my
all the
hair.
time.
Yeah.
So I think, I think it is there. So people are vulnerable. They're coming to you with their heart in their hands almost. And you have to have all the answers. But we don't.
Yeah.
And we say that we don't. We've got tools, we've got pathways we can take, but it's also just what Dr. Belsham is saying, just about being authentic and showing up just as yourself, because that consistency is what actually creates that table for us to come and chat.
Yes.
That's good.
And it's a process.
It
It's
is.
literally the process.
And it's a journey.
Yes.
And you know, people might think what they want is answers.
Yeah.
Almost like Joel's sermon on Sunday, you're coming in a transactional way to God because you need stuff. But if we go deeper, maybe what they really want is the table and the relationship and the journey. I mean, I've had I'm sure you've had some of your clients that you've been with for a long time. I've had some that have been with me for 20 years. I've had some that I'm now seeing the offspring of the kids that I saw.
That's great.
You know, so and I'm seeing the second generation. And I think that people really appreciate that journey and the connection, even if you don't have all the answers. And I think that's their journey, is to come to realize that too.
Yeah.
Is it's not formulaic. You know, a lot of life isn't. I mean, it's nice when you have solutions and you can fix stuff reasonably quickly, but you can't always. And I think we need to make peace with that. And I think part of the journey of our clientele is to also make peace with that.
Yeah.
That's part of their journey as well.
Let's ask you that question as a pastor,
Yeah.
being treated as a psychologist, as it were.
Who can't hand out pills, which is unfortunate.
It's a severe disadvantage.
Yeah. Here you go.
What pills would you give?
Here's
Please do not ask. Just let it go to
I
the
just want to give people Panado. But I'll use the same phrasing here. I think many times people maybe do come wanting answers, not realizing that maybe what they're actually asking for is discipleship.
Yes.
And I say that because I think sometimes the reason I feel like many times people want a therapist from me is that they feel judged with anything other than they already pre-decided idea about what they want to do. And so when one comes in with an engagement, whether it's from the text or whatever, the text feels like Bible bashing. The encouragement for the kind of relationship that forms in community feels like you throwing me as a problem for somebody else. Now, this is not the majority of Every Nation Bryanston. I'm talking about 17 years of doing ministry. It's, I need you to affirm something in me.
Yeah.
I don't need you to fix something in me. And you live in that tension. I'm actually not trying to fix, but I do believe you need discipleship. You need a relationship with God and with others and with people who don't know Jesus that you can input into. But what it feels like you want from me is an hour when you can share what you want to share. And I kind of give you some thoughts that still align within the frame of your thinking. Now, I don't think that that's true in your world. I'm sure there's things that you say that people are like, we're not going to choose you. We're going to choose somebody else, right? And that happens all the time at church. There's way too many churches for anyone to decide to live in discomfort, which I think is one of the most unfortunate things. Now, you Bryanston folks know, I don't mind. I'll help you find another church. It's not about the issue. But I think the unfortunate thing is that Christianity was not built to work that way.
Yeah.
It was actually built to continuously find ways of how do we still remain in the same boat and let the imperfections of our life figure out the issues together, versus I come to you and you give me the solutions, particularly ones that I like.
And if I don't like them, I'll
And
go
if
to
I don't
another
like,
boat.
someone will tell me.
I'll find the boat that tells me the thing I
Because
want.
many times, by the time someone comes to me, they've actually spoken to at least 3 other leaders in the church. And they're trying to make sure that by the time they speak to me, they can say, well, Siv said. And it's very interesting. And so I almost have to go, so who did you chat to before? What did they say? And I long for a time where the dynamic of discipleship and mental health and faith is experienced within the confines of regular, everyday
life.
because I don't think it's just delegated to experts. I think it's delegated to faith, hope, and love, and figuring it out in our context. And when we hit the block, we can bring in the expert and bring in to help us continue in that journey versus replace the journey.
Yes. Yeah, good.
So maybe it's also that line between counsel and counseling,
Fair enough.
right? But I think in essence, at least for me, from where I stand, when we are grounding our frameworks in biblical text, in how God sees what it means to be human and what it means to flourish, I think there's a health that can come that is almost marries or doesn't separate counsel and counseling. You know what I mean? Fully realizing that there are people who are trained, who've spent money and hours and are knowledgeable and are able to give a particular type of counseling that can help you. But there's something to be said about the body being able to counsel one another, thinking through, what does the Bible say? What would mental health for you, given your particular context, an Elijah experience, what would that look like for you? Because in that moment, actually, it looks like rest. That's what God said to Elijah, bro, take a break. Let's review, eat. Can you imagine? And that is a human thing. It's not even so much a spiritual thing or a mental health, professional thing. It really is. This is part of the human experience, and the Bible speaks to it. But there's this book that I'm reading. I'm listening to. I always feel super guilty when I'm saying I'm reading, when I'm actually listening to it. But it's such a
how
great
are you
read.
dealing with the shame?
Whatever. But it's a book called The Burnout Society, and I don't agree with everything in it, but he has this compelling idea that we've moved from being the kind of society where the way that we live through life is because there is discipline. You wake up at this time, you go to work, and you do this very specific job, and you knock off at this time, and then the rest of your life must look a particular way, right? Like there's this framework that's almost top down that's been impressed on us, and that's how we live, right? But now we're in what he calls an achievement society, which I love so much because he says there's this idea of becoming, right? Of achieving the fullness of your purpose and everything that you can be, and how this has become a burden to us, actually, that we're burdened with becoming ourselves. So it's this achievement society where you're always working, where you're essentially, where there used to be a boss who used to tell you, you must, you now have internalized this boss, for lack of better words, and you're pressing yourself to become this person,
to
this
self-actualize.
Exactly. So I'd love for us to speak to that a little bit. Any thoughts on that and where you've seen it kind of play out, maybe in your own life or even in, lives of family, friends, and people that you've counseled?
Well, I think that I agree with it. I think that's true. And I think it's it coincides with the age of the individual, where it's the individual rather than the communal which is celebrated. And but I don't think it's biblical. And I think that's the challenge, is for us to somehow bring biblical truth into that ethos. Because if you think about if you take it down to a fundamental question, which I've actually been thinking about a lot recently, why do we actually get out of bed in the mornings?
Good.
Like, why do we actually do it? Because, okay, you might have a parent with a big stick saying you got to get out of bed. That age seems to have passed, but children get to an age where it passes anyway.
Yeah.
And even for myself, like why? What actually gets me out of bed in the morning? And I don't know how people who are not of faith actually, if they're honest with themselves, rationalize how they get out of bed in the mornings. Because I get out of bed because it's an act of worship to God, to do justice to the talent that He's given me.
To steward your life well.
To steward my life well. Now, that talent, of course, is not just my career. It's the relationships He's put around me. It's the property that I might have that I need to mow the lawn. But ultimately, it's all from God. And even showing up at work, whether you work for yourself or you have a boss, you're doing it unto God, not unto man. I was, in preparation for today, I was thinking of that scripture. It's actually addressed to slaves, where Paul writes in Colossians, he's talking to slaves, and he says, obey your masters, etc. And he says, whatever you do, do it unto the Lord, not unto man, because it is God you are serving, not man. And then it goes on to say you will be rewarded by your heavenly Father, because ultimately we all work for reward. But we need to look beyond the immediate temporal reward of a paycheck, or a pat on the back from your boss, or looking good on social media. We have to go beyond that, because that ultimately won't fulfill us. We'll get burnt out if that's what we're chasing.
100%.
And I've experienced that myself in the course of my career, and I suppose my own personal growth. But I think it's got to come down to working as unto the Lord.
Very good.
Whatever we do, and even if we're a stay-at-home mom, we're doing it as unto the Lord. And one more little thing before I forget, and I think that dovetails very well when Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you." Because I think being yoked with Him means working unto the Lord and not unto your boss. Not to say that's wrong not to do what you're supposed to do, but ultimately, what is that ultimate final purpose? Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I interrupted you.
I think it's a higher call to work unto the Lord than unto your boss.
Yes.
And more difficult, because unto my boss, I can do the minimum required.
Exactly.
And tick the box.
And coming back to that very same scripture, you've reminded me, it says, not only when his eye is on you, i.e. your master, your boss, but when it's not, because you're not doing it to be noticed by him ultimately.
And if the reward can only be experienced on this side of eternity, then my goodness, are you going to be working hard?
Oh, exactly.
We're in
my
trouble.
good, are you just going to be pressing yourself beyond your God-given limitations and find yourself burnt out, stressed, anxious, depressed.
That's where the overachiever comes from, because it's the spinning wheel, right? We keep going because we need to achieve, but we also sometimes with burnout we have a lower level of satisfaction even when we do achieve. There's a lower level, so like there's a dip. I'm not really satisfied, so
That's
just have
right,
to keep going. But yet, if we're working for God and if we have this sense of this relationship with God, and we can come to the table, there isn't that self-actualization, this level that it's just this process that we constantly go on to be closer and closer to Him. So it's a very different. Who are you serving? Are you serving yourself in your identity with your work, or are you serving God?
So if you were speaking to someone who finds themselves anxious, finds themselves on the brink of burnout, they are incredibly stressed by the pressures of work, and you had to speak to them about how to live better, right? And especially if the pressures of work are their reality, they are going back to work tomorrow. Their master is either going to be on them or not hearing, their plea for things to change so that they can have a better working environment. What does it look like to empower someone as an individual to be able to live through that suffering?
So I'm going to, throw this to the experts to answer, but...
You're an expert too.
Well, one of the things and I'm kind of giving this as a caveat to whatever answer you give. One of the reasons why I sometimes don't like the separation between faith and mental health is if we believe that there is such a thing as objective truth, then, and we believe that that objective truth sits somehow in the confines of this God who's created, who claims that He is the truth Himself. Truth obtained in the process of mental health falls within the confines of absolute truth.
I like that.
And I think when you read, whether it's the Platos or Socrates, who are trying to, or the early apologists, who are trying to navigate a world where there's all this Greek philosophy and faith, one of them, I think it's Justine the Martyr, comes to that realization that, guys, some of the things that you think are like amazing are like normal for faith. It's like it's normal. And the end of this part is a person, whilst the end of this part is just you better. Whilst here it's this sanctification journey. So I do think that sometimes even when we are speaking to the anxious person, and even now before the end of this, I'm hoping I've got like 3 different examples in my head that I want to put up before the guys. I'm enjoying that sometimes these are not concepts that are fighting against each other. They might have a different literature, different wrapping, but
different jargon.
We believe in absolute truth, and this truth works and it sets free, right? And there's actually quote unquote truth. There's things that come off as truth but are lies, and the way you see them is that they lead to a bondage, even if that bondage is licentiousness and I can do whatever I want. It's a bondage, right? So I do think the more and more we create the kind of environment in the church world where these two are not fighting, I think the deeper we can get to some of the things that we want to define as competing, that actually they're not. Anyway.
Absolutely. And a biblical way of seeing what it means to be human is a deeply integrated way. Right? And the body, soul, spirit, mind, emotions, all of those things are in the biblical imagination. They're all deeply integrated and they speak to one another. And when there is a lack of balance in one, it doesn't just affect that one place, it affects the whole person. So that tension shouldn't exist. right? It shouldn't. That line shouldn't exist. Maybe that's a better way to phrase it. But maybe to speak to helping people in stressful situations and finding themselves anxious and burdened by work. I'd love for you to speak to maybe even some practical things around some of the work that you have done. I know for me, I'm the rest police. I am convinced that rest will fix anything. A good Sabbath rest, a good silent retreat. My goodness, I find those things incredibly helpful. But I'd love to hear some thoughts.
So just as you were talking, I was just bringing up a graph. I don't know if you did the same thing, Dr. Belsham, but the 8 elements. So we can't really, just speaking to what you're saying, we can't really focus and function in one area. So financial health or physical health or emotional health. Those things all kind of twirl in together, making up this person that we navigate, or this life that we're navigating with this person called myself, right? And I think when it comes to practicality, we have to understand the person as a whole. Where are the needs? Because even rest is not even linear. It's not you get physical rest, you get sensory rest, you get spiritual rest. And a lot of us will go on holiday and be like, I'm just going to take a book and I'm just going to sleep. Guess what? You'll come back in January. You have not had a holiday. So you really need to journey with yourself before you even get to that stage. Because remember, you have to form kind of a book or a way of doing things before you get to your challenges. It's the same thing like walking the journey with God. You don't just come to Him in prayer when you're anxious and when you all over the place. Your journey and your relationship comes out when you are pressed.
Yeah.
So in those moments, we're going to look at what kind of rest would really feed you.
That's really good.
Are we reading? No, that's not me. And we would go through a little bit of an assessment just to look at those 7 areas of rest. A lot of us focus on the physical and we leave the spiritual. So we don't spend time with God. We don't have a purpose in life. We don't know our calling. We grind because we know we have to not be poor because we were poor when we were growing up. And so we just need to keep working. That's it.
Can I interrupt you briefly when you mentioned the types of rest? I once heard a very wise rabbi, not myself, say that your Sabbath rest should be very different to what you do for a living.
Amazing.
So if you do something very cerebral, like you sit and you're listening and you're talking, then it's probably good to be physically active, to be pruning the roses or going for a run.
That's so helpful.
So you're not just sitting on a couch and just staring at the ceiling.
Yeah.
Whereas perhaps, and maybe this was more the case in Jesus' time, if your work is very physical, like you're a carpenter, or agriculture, or you're plowing the field, then you do something the opposite. Do something more cerebral, kind of think about the meaning of life or write philosophical scrolls or something like that.
Nice.
And so I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, and I've certainly experienced that for myself. But the principle of Sabbath is so important, and it sounds too religious when you talk about Sabbath. But I mean, the neuroscience behind resting is that whether it's on an intraday basis, and I need to find a gap in every day to just be away from work and think about something different and have a cup of coffee, or on a weekly basis, which is the principle of the sort of weekly Sabbath, or on an annual basis, like taking a sabbatical. Maybe that's even on every 10 years kind of basis. But that principle of Sabbath is so vital. It's neuroscientifically proven. Jesus did some funny things with the Sabbath, kind of messed it up a bit. And he said some, at least apparently controversial and contradictory things about it. Because on the one hand, he healed on the Sabbath when he wasn't supposed to. And then when they called him on it, he said, but my Father's always working to this day. And so am I. But that doesn't mean he threw away the principle. What he was doing was he was saying the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So he was trying to do away with the legalism of the Sabbath rather than the principle of the Sabbath.
So
and I think in our modern free Christian world, we've actually forgotten to have a Sabbath. And because we can do anything.
Society.
I mean, my son plays soccer on the Sabbath. Like, I don't have a problem with that. But, like, when do we actually rest?
Yeah.
And we end up doing our emails and we just let work encroach onto. And I think that's something we could all do well to sort of take stock of.
Yeah, one of my favorite preachers has a really great phrase about
Is this a
using
psychologist?
your no, it's another, using your Sabbath to get all the things that you haven't done. You quickly like pile them into that day, like your laundry or whatever it may be. He calls it a Sabbath.
That's nice.
Because it's really necessary to cease from work, to stop, to reflect, to worship, to be present to your family, to be present to God in order for that to be restful. It's not just stopping, it's stopping and allowing a rhythm of worship and reflection and even enjoyment, right?
Yes.
Of like enjoying the fruit of your labor to be part of that moment. You wanted to say something? Yeah?
I know we supposedly have to land this plane.
Yes, we're going to land it.
Come on now. But I really want to put Candice and Doc on the spot. Could you create 10 commandments of mental health on the spot? Okay. For people working on some foreign, people working right here in Joburg who what they're going through, people you've met at church, meeting their kids. If both of you had to give 5 commandments each on how to begin to take steps towards a more holistic health, mental, spiritual, all those dynamics, what would your top 5 commandments be?
Dr. Belsham is older than me, so I think he has 7. I'll do 3.
We'll give him an extra 2.
Well, I mean, I think it would also depend on who your audience is, because if you can appeal to people who are of faith, Christian people who acknowledge the Lord as their creator, then I think certainly the top few would all be related to that relationship with the Maker. So creating time each day.
Okay.
To commune with God.
Yeah.
Love that.
First,
one.
And look, people say you have your quiet time at different times. I think first thing in the morning makes perfect sense to me. Before I've seen anything on the news, before I've read my WhatsApps or my emails or seen what my bank account is doing or anything like that.
So what does that look like for you? Are you putting your Bible right next to your bedside, or do you have a routine? You wake up, go straight to it?
Listen, don't get me wrong. I'm not perfect in this, and I know I don't want to create the impression that I am. But it's the discipline. I'm not actually looking at the phone.
Good.
Is to my quiet time spot is down in my study. So it's if you like, making a beeline for there. My Bible's there, my notebook is there.
That's great.
And that communing with God doesn't have to be formulaic. It can be listening to a worship song. It can be reading the Bible, of course, is important. It can be that prayer or listening to God. It can be reading. I mean, I'm reading the Screw Tape Letters again by C.S. Lewis. And I'm so enjoying being reacquainted with that. But, so I think we must give ourselves permission for that. I mean, what do psychologists call it now? It's mindfulness, isn't it? So we've got a word for it that's outside of religious
faith,
jargon. So if I'm speaking to people who are not of faith, then we'll talk about that. And people can relate to the idea of meditation or journaling. Journaling's quite a thing. So is that counts as about 3. Could that be 3? Reading, prayer, journaling.
We'll give you 2. We'll give you 2 commandments are in there.
And hot on the heels of that, exercise.
I was
Okay,
about
great.
to say, I'm
Guys.
surprised
Oh, yeah,
you didn't
no.
say.
No, listen, I know for me personally, and I'm always trying to advocate it, but I know how good I feel
good.
if I started the day with some cardiovascular exercise.
Whether it's a walk, whether brisk walk,
run,
jog.
swim, cycle, whatever you do, your gym class.
Nice.
The problem with the gym class is you have to listen to that music that you get in the gym, and that, I don't think that's so exactly right. So, but the principle of exercise, and I wonder often why in the Bible exercise isn't mentioned more, because I feel like it's so important. But I think the reason is that it was inherent in their lifestyles.
Constantly
I mean, you would
walking.
walk 10
Constantly
kilometers
walking.
on your farm or your agricultural patch every day, whereas we live very sedentary lives. Okay, that's 4. So now it's your turn.
And by the way, which is why then washing someone's feet was so big
Yes.
and
yes.
considered such a beautiful place of honor. This person has been walking the whole day. So when they walk in and you wash their feet, you're not like you've been covered here by nice, Nike tackies. You've done some graft. You've been exercising for a while. So I think that's beautiful. Yes, another commandment or 2.
So for me, it's always, and this is neuroscience based, is the first 5 minutes of the day is actually very powerful. So your morning routine is actually top. It's like it weighs 80% in terms of productivity and just being focused and just doing what you need to do in order for that day to be successful. And success, we can define how you want to define it. But so the first 5 days, it's almost like giving the first fruits of your thoughts to God. So it's the first, like I always feel like those days when I'm intentional and I do, it's like my day is just fulfilled and meaningful, and I really walk with purpose.
Yes, good.
So it will be the first fruits in terms of my thoughts. Definitely drink water. Definitely tithe. I think from a financial perspective,
Yes.
it calms your central nervous system in a way that
so
nothing
good.
else can.
Yeah.
So good.
It's really not about God. I mean, let's be honest. It's really about just your relationship with money, your relationship with God, and your trust in Him.
Yes.
I think that's about 3.
That's good.
I'm so glad you mentioned tithing. Because again, it's sort of gone out of fashion. Well, I don't know, people don't talk about it so much
Sabbath.
anymore. Yeah, like Sabbath. But I think the spiritual power of basically giving the proverbial middle finger to money,
Yeah.
and the power that
Yes.
money can hold over you
That's good.
is because what it does is it frees you.
Very good.
It helps reorientate you and remind you who you're working for
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Exactly. The last one would be serving someone. So my mom used to say, you don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. But what she meant is that your husband mustn't know how you're spending your money. So I'm going to say,
You
my
know, that's
husband
close to
Mom.
biblical interpretation.
No.
I was like, no, Mom, that's not how it works. But really, serving in a way, serving a community, serving your husband in a way that he didn't really, maybe even acknowledged or didn't, serving your kids. Yeah. And I think also just
Being
rest.
outward looking.
Yes,
Being outward
but also
looking.
just rest. Rest is resistance in our culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very
Rest
much.
is
Absolutely.
not
Yes.
it's-
Joy and rest
I know
are
you-
resistance.
Yeah,
we sometimes feel like, no, it's laziness or it's easy to rest.
Yes.
It's not easy to rest.
Yeah.
It's not easy to
Absolutely.
quieten your mind
Absolutely.
and to be in a space of absolute surrender
Absolutely.
is difficult.
Can
Yeah,
I add
totally
in another
agreed.
practical one? I don't know if we're on number 8 or 9, but I think certainly what I've found is investing in your career in a way that doesn't necessarily reflect what you do day to day. And for me, that means going on a conference. Or phoning a colleague and having coffee.
Yes.
And talking about something to do with our work, but it's not the grind of
Yeah.
9
Yes.
to 5
Yeah.
work. And I think some companies are very proactive about investing in their employees because it's not productive time.
Yeah.
So I guess the risk is to end up just being on the treadmill all
Yeah.
the time.
And you can't see the benefits quickly.
Not
so
immediately.
It's that future.
But I do know when I've got out of town and gone to a conference, even though I know I'm not earning in that time, it's so refreshing. And I come back like ready to go again,
What I'm loving about these 10 commandments, as it were, is that they are definitely speaking to our relationship with productivity. Right? Our relationship again with achieving and doing. And that in order to have a healthy relationship that is not riddled with, anxiety and burnout, etc., that in order to have a healthy relationship with your work, that there needs to be this countering force that looks like it's actually not effective, right? Rest. Yes. Exercise, investing in your career in things that don't look like they're going to benefit you immediately.
Yes.
Right? There's this beautiful slowing down that I think orientates you to focusing on God again and not focusing on mammon in terms of who you're serving and how you're going to serve. Yeah. So I think they're incredibly helpful.
Let me give two more. I think the beauty of delayed gratification as part of your lifestyle. We spoke earlier about Sabbath and tithing, and I'm going to mention a point now at the end, but I think delayed gratification is good for living under your means. It's good for the way you eat. It's good for, all right, when am I going to sleep during the day? Et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that has been life-changing for me for the last 2 years has been evaluation. Tithe and then evaluate how you feel. Because part of the dynamic with tithe and Sabbath is the confusion, not just, look, theologically, I think there's less confusion more than there is cultural confusion because of past bad experiences.
Yeah.
But when you're in a new context, tithe and see how you feel. In that you evaluate that, I love what you said, that emotional strain of dependence and feeling that experience of I'm trusting God kind of experience. For me, it has been evaluating when I eat this kind of food, here's how I feel. I go, I'm not going to eat that food anymore. When I drink this kind of drink, here's how I'm not going to drink that anymore. Or when I act this way, or I do this, or I sleep there, just the small act of evaluating certain things in your day to go, what is the root of that? And just making small tweaks over time. Yes. After 2 years, you begin to figure out what works for me. Yeah. Is it the running? Is it the walking? Is it the, is it the going with friends somewhere? And maybe it's all those things, but in certain moments, this is what I need to do versus I don't know what to do. Let me just turn on Netflix and just watch. Try things. In fact, watch the Netflix and then ask yourself, how do I feel?
Did it work?
Do I feel great now at 10 a.m. or do I just feel sluggish? Evaluate, be honest.
Yeah,
just to interrupt there, you're basically talking about the difference between numbing and resting.
Very good.
So if we're numbing, we are not resting. There's no restorative things happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good.
See? TIC.
Very good. Right. Well, I think this was great, and I trust that it was helpful for you guys as you are watching. My final thought really around what it looks like to thrive, at least in Babylon, considering the things that weren't said on Sunday, but are very much said in the text, that it is so important for us to know that our aim ultimately is to become like Jesus, right? To be with Jesus, to become like Jesus, and live life the way Jesus would, like do the things Jesus would. And I wonder if it would be helpful for people to consider their work life with that frame. What does it look like for me to approach my work having been with Jesus? What does it look like for me to approach my work with this formational idea of becoming like Jesus? And what would Jesus do if he was doing the thing that I am currently doing in my day to day? Thank you so much, Doc, Candice, spouse.
Psychologist. Peace.
Signing out. Very good, very good. If Sue wasn't here, I would have ended on time. I'm just saying.
Yep.
But I think I think it's good. Happy editing.
It's you. At some point, we were like, yay. And then you were like, Ten Commandments.
I
You needed to take commandments.
know. Very good.
All right, great. Thanks, guys.
How'd it go?